That final panel of this chapter is literally like Galther is diving into a dark ocean and searching for a very thin and small light. That's what that final page or final panel means to me. But anyways, let's talk about what happened. So, King demolished Mel. Now, let's just be real here. With King's new power-up, we expect Mel in some shape or form to get demolished. That's a given. Like, usually when a power-up happens, usually the character will beat the crap out of the opposing force for about a full chapter, maybe two, and then probably get defeated. I've seen this happen in a lot. Not just in Shonen, but in a lot of series. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying it's something that you see typically. So I just want to throw that out there before anyone starts making any assumptions of what might happen. They need to take into consideration that there's a possibility that King is being set up to job against Mel to build him up for the final fight. Now, if we're assuming that is not going to happen and King actually won, what is next, and what does this mean for the series? That's kind of where I want to take this review, okay? Because I'm not going to talk about if, Mel's going to get back up and all that, because the reason why, it's just very stereotypical, it's very cliche, and honestly, I've talked about this in other series, so I just don't want to talk about that. So, I want to talk about something that kind of interests me, which is if King actually demolished Mel, and he's on the ground, and he's probably not going to get back up. So, let's say King did win, okay? Number one, this makes us believe that King's power level, his strength, is above Mel, which has 4 commandments within him, not including that he's an archangel. He has the base power of an archangel while having 4 commandments within him. Now, from what we've already seen from Mel's track record, and as Estarossa, he's taken down Mon, which was a very strong magic caster. He has taken down Derriere. He has fought 2 archangels as just Estarossa, tanked them, and then eventually he beat them as Mel, and then he has beat the crap out of Galther, and then, we saw him fighting regular King. I mean, he's someone that's kind of like a monster. We've seen the damage that he can do. He is definitely not weak by any means. But King comes in with his new power-up and demolishes him. He pretty much hits the ground. It looks like it's pretty much the end of the fight. If we're not going along with the standard cliche, this looks like the end of the fight. And you're left wondering, how? Why? Like, why is King so strong? Not even factoring in if this is the end of Mel or not. Like, many are like, okay, so why is King so strong? You could say this is power creep. This is just that, inevitable power creep that happens at any shonen when numbers start getting thrown in, that, when characters have to get stronger to keep up with the other characters, power creep comes in and it can really upset the balance of power scaling. It's something that happens in a lot of series, not just Dragon Ball. I know everybody's going to be popping up and talking about Dragon Ball, but it's not just Dragon Ball that has to deal with power creep. The only series I've ever seen that really is able to deal with the essence of power creep, in my personal opinion, there's probably others out there, but what I have seen is actually something along the lines of One Piece and Hunter x Hunter, especially Hunter x Hunter when it comes to its entire nin system. It's so complex, so many little details to it that it really can balance everything out, from really strong, opponents, from weak opponents, and everybody's pretty much on a level playing field. So, honestly, power creep and power scaling happens almost in every single series. It's something that you should expect almost in a shonen, especially a battle shonen. So that could be one of the things going on here, many are saying. So King just won thanks to power creep and all that, and power scaling just be all sorts of wonky. But there is something that kind of justifies King's level of strength at the moment. We gotta factor in that it was stated a long time ago that King, when his wings are fully grown, he will be one of the strongest fairies and the strongest fairy king in all of history. That's what was stated a long time ago. So it's not like this event of power came out of nowhere. It was never said that King's power would be just slightly above, the previous fairy kings, or it would be, around Escanor's level. It was never stated that's where his level would be. We do have to mention the fact that with King's new level of strength as well, we gotta remember that when he had his wings kind of, barely grown out, he was at the level of the previous fairy king. He was pretty much at that level. So you gotta imagine with how much his wings has already grown, or just fully grown out now, just not slightly grown out, but fully grown out, his power is probably insanely large. So you could assume that his power could be over 200k, which would be somewhere around where maybe Mel is at, maybe Meliodas is somewhere around there, but, you know, that's what you could assume. So King right now is incredibly strong, unless there's other things that we're really not factoring in, like, you know, third-party issues that's happening in this fight. Let's tackle that. So, Mel, he got defeated, obviously, in this chapter. Either he, you know, got destroyed and he's gonna get back up, or, you know, he's really down. Now, we gotta remember that was described in this chapter is that Mel was weakening. He became weaker and weaker as the fight went on. And the reason why was because the commandments within his body was disrupting his natural flow and breaking him apart. With him spending all his magical energy and using these commandments constantly, his body is just starting to break apart. It's something that was established for a while now, before this fight even really began, but with Mel and Estarossa, that it was stated that if he took in a lot of commandments, like more than one, his body would start to become very unstable. You can't also say that came out of nowhere, because that's also been built up. So it makes sense why maybe he's been losing a lot of power, getting weaker and weaker, and then eventually King was able to curb stomp him. His mind wasn't in the proper alignment, because you even see in this chapter when King is looking at his emotions, his mind and all that, he is just a bunch of hatred, confusion, doesn't really know what he's doing, which clarifies what I've been talking about the past couple chapter reviews, that we don't really know the mindset of Mel. We didn't know if he was actually thinking, or if he was crazy. We didn't really know, and it was clear now after this chapter that he definitely wasn't in the proper state of mind. He really can't even speak. He's so consumed by his hatred and, you know, wanting to get vengeance and all that, he couldn't see right, he can't think right, and, you know, he's not able to perform properly, like, you know, how Estarossa was, because regardless of how unstable Estarossa was, he was definitely someone that was a tank, but very, very smart with how he handled many situations, and so you can see how this Mel, even though his level of strength is a lot stronger than the previous, it's definitely not as strong, because just because he has the power doesn't mean that he's stronger than the previous one, because he's not able to utilize it right. He's not able to use the power of this new form, because the commandments have just messed with his mind so badly. So yeah, that is some clarification there. So maybe the reason why King actually did curb stomp Mel in this chapter wasn't because King was extremely strong, which that still makes sense. It's been built up for a while. But it's also probably a mix of things. It's probably because Mel, just his body's breaking apart. He's just destroying himself because his body can't take all the commandments within him. So yeah, that's my personal outlook on the chapter. I don't know if that's correct or not, but that's what I personally think happened and why King was able to demolish him. I guess let's talk about King's hairdo. So I gotta admit, his hair looked a little bit better in this chapter. I said in my last chapter review, I didn't really like it. I admit that. I don't. But after seeing a little bit more in this chapter, seeing the different angles of his hair and the way Nakaba-sensei expressed him, it definitely was a lot better than the final page of the last chapter. So it might grow on me as time goes on. Maybe the King of Rock King's, you know, new hairstyle might, you know, grow on me to where I'm like, you know what, I can't see King go back to his normal self. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. I mean, we also have, Galther make a major power play in this, you know, chapter, where he actually tries to fix everything, which makes sense, because everything began from Galther, or OG Galther. Everything began with him, and it would make sense that, you know, the doll Galther would have to go in and try to clean up the mess of his father, and that's what's happening. He's trying to fix things to make Mel in the right state of mind. Even though he might not ever forgive Galther or whatever happened to him, it's still only the good thing to do to remove the commandments from the man, and at least put him in the right state of mind, and that's what Galther's trying to do. So if I had to assume, if Mel isn't getting back up, okay, let's just assume Mel isn't getting back up, then most likely the next chapter is probably going to be Galther and Mel having a heart-to-heart inside of his head. We know that Galther can talk to you inside of your head. This has happened before. We've seen it. So most likely Galther is going to be talking to Mel. They're going to be talking about the issues that they need to overcome and what has happened, and maybe some form of, you know, path that they can choose to be able to overcome this. Or, if we're going the really dark method, Mel isn't defeated, he destroys Galther, resists him, and then the fight continues. That's the other thing, which, like I said, that's the more cliche route, but that could also happen. That's not something we should, write out and say it can't happen. But that's about it. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, how you felt about this week's chapter of Taizai. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? How do you feel about King's new strength? How do you feel about him being able to use multiple spirit spears? How he's able to, use, like, defensive abilities, but also offensive abilities at once, instead of just having to rely on one and then switching over. It's definitely helping him a lot. It's definitely able to allow him to be defensive and offensive as a fighter, and I'm looking forward to future fights. If this really isn't the first and last time we're going to see of this new king, then I am really looking forward to it, because honestly, I've always liked King. He's been one of my favorites, and I've always liked how OP he's been in the series, and it's been a while, actually, since King has really felt like this. Like, reading a chapter and feeling like King truly is an OP man, and that he can just demolish people. I mean, this has been like a go-to thing with King's character since the beginning of the series, honestly. I mean, he's always kind of been like that. Now, one last thing to talk about, which I think many of you are wondering, so you're like, probably Chibi, if Mel is defeated, then what's next? Well, obviously, Meliodas is probably going to be the final villain then, because, I mean, if Mel's not going to be, then Meliodas will, because he's absorbing all the commandments, and we know he has no emotions, and what better way to kind of really make an interesting finale or final villain than have your main character become the final villain? Now that's a twist. That is something I'm actually interested in, if that is definitely the case, if that does happen, if Meliodas becomes the definitive final villain. And as I said, I don't know if the Demon King or even the Supreme Goddess might ever get answered in terms of their level of strength in this series, because if Nakaba Sensei ever does want to carry over with another series, then we might not get that fight or see really how strong those two are in, getting to see them as the final boss or something, maybe until a new series. But who knows? I could be wrong there. But I'll end this video here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.